स्वस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So up to now, we saw the relationship of awareness. First, we did two things in the last class. First thing we did is, not only we said that this awareness is distinct from the body and mind, what we said is, this awareness is not only specially connected to you. We took out what? The limitation, your special connection to this awareness. Awareness is what? Free from any connection with anything. So that means it doesn't have a specific location. It is free and it is everywhere. That is the first thing we did. Right? Freed it from a special connection with your body and mind. Like, I'll just give you an example. It seems as though this is a pot space, right? And this pot space is limited, it seems like that, by the pot. But what is the reality? How many spaces are there? Is there a bottle space? Is there a pot space? Is there a room space? How many spaces are there? Only one. So that means that, then why is it that it seems like pot space? Tell me. Because the presence of pot as though gives a boundary to the space. But in reality, what is the reality? There is only one undivided space. The coming of the pot does not cut the space into two. One is the pot space and the other one is outside space. But visually, it seems as though this space is distinct from outside space. So this is why space begins to have what? Many different locations. One is a bottle space, the other one is a vase space, pot space. But in reality, these are just confinements which are what? Only an appearance. One undivided space. So what we did is, this body and this mind is like what? As though what? Enclosing awareness. And that body and mind as though enclosing awareness. So that means awareness seems like many and all specific. What we said is, the body and minds are different, but the awareness is one undivided whole, like the space. Seems to be confined, but in reality not confined. The space is everywhere. And it is neither affected, listen to this carefully, neither it is affected by the size of the pot, nor if in case the pot had water inside it, or if the pot had coke inside it, or a pot had juice inside it, or even beer inside it. Does the space get affected? Does the space get tainted? No. Pervading everything, it is already free from everything. This is the nature of awareness. Not only the body doesn't confine awareness, but what is inside the body, in this case the mind, also doesn't contaminate awareness. It is free. So that means we took out not only the location and we made it all pervading and one, not many space, not many awareness, only one awareness. The second thing we did is, not only there is one awareness and then there are all the different objects. The so-called object category itself is mithya. If you begin to, on one hand, the objects seem like huge. You try to stand in front of a huge mountain, you feel what? So small. But this huge mountain of I don't know how many meters, and you enjoy the same. What? If you look in terms of content, it is nothing but different permutation and combination of atoms and particles. The mountain is same earth. It is also, there is air there. There is water. And you in your body also is the same 5 elements, but combined differently. So therefore, this whole object category we reduce into 5 elements, and those 5 elements again we reduce to atoms, and the atoms again to particles, and then we say it goes on and on and on, and ultimately it just resolves in concept. Why? Because there is nothing concrete and there is nothing final. Then we said, okay, so the object category is all reduced to concept, and then, but only one thing remains, and that is what? Awareness. So therefore, what is the relationship between the concept and awareness? I. There is again Satya Mithya relationship. The concept cannot exist without awareness. Awareness is independent of the concept. So this is how we came to non-duality. Non-duality means that there is no two. There is no two, but the meaning of there is no two doesn't mean that there are not different forms. Please understand this. There are thousands of forms, millions of forms. If you look at the forms, you can count billions, trillions, whatever, countless. But if you look at the content, because all these varied forms are, if you look at their content, there is only one. And what is the relationship? Form cannot exist without the content, and the content is independent of the form. So that means here you have two names. What are the two names? One is pot and the other one is clay. But if you see the reality, how many are there? Two things? No. Why are there not two things? Because if I say that, okay, if you think there are two things, I think there is only one thing, which is clay, and let me take out the clay and you can have pot. What would you be left with? Nothing. That's why there is only one. You have two names but one reality. You can have million names but one reality. If the relationship is Satya Mithya. You don't need to destroy forms to know non-duality. You don't need to have a special experience of oneness to understand the vision of Vedanta. You can see everything exactly as before. What shifts is your understanding. The minute you shift your understanding to the final independent reality, the forms become matter of celebration. They don't pose a problem. You don't need to stay away from the forms. You don't need to destroy forms. You can enjoy different paths and their functions, and at the same time you never lose the sight of the vision. All that is here is clear. This is Vedanta. Everything else other than that is Devanta. Devanta means our own understanding of Vedanta. You are not trying to alter anything. As long as your mind isn't trying to alter things, what will happen is you try to create new experiences. The experiences of non-duality. And until that is your orientation, you will keep going. Because, understand, the experience of non-duality, all of us have in plenty. What is that experience of non-duality that all of us have in plenty? All of us go to sleep, and there is a deep sleep where the subject-object difference disappears for us. In deep sleep, you don't even have a thought that I am now not thinking. Even that is not available. The object also disappears. The whole universe is resolved in your understanding. So there is neither any subject, nor any object, nor any world. But in spite of this experience, every night, did it do anything to remove our ignorance? No. We woke up and we remained exactly the same. One more extraordinary experience, which I don't know what it could be, whatever you imagine. Cannot shake this fact, and that is this relationship between Atma and Ananda. Atma is independently existing. Everything else which is not Atma has a dependent reality. And dependent reality by definition means it cannot exist without the reality. And therefore, it cannot do anything to the reality. Now, time and space. Time and space itself, it's very interesting. For the longest time, see, science, even though it cannot get to where Vedanta is, because science is based on perception, and perception is always about objects. And Vedanta subject is, what is the subject matter of Vedanta? The nature of I, which by definition you cannot objectify. So that's why you can't put science and Vedanta in the same category, because the domain is different. Now, but one thing is similar. One thing is similar, and that is rigorous reasoning. That is similar. So therefore, the discoveries of science, they help Vedanta. Um, they don't contradict what Vedanta is saying. Even though they cannot arrive at what Vedanta says, they don't contradict what Vedanta says. They can't contradict what Vedanta says. So therefore, for the longest time, all of us thought about time and space as absolute reality. What does it mean? That the time and space is constant and it is always there and equally everywhere, and only the objects change within this fixed time and space framework. So the objects undergo change, but the time and space is fixed and equal everywhere in the universe. This particular, the whole of Newtonian physics was based on this understanding of time and space being absolute and non-changing. Then came Einstein. There was a whole paradigm shift in physics. The time and space, which was considered to be absolute for the longest time by humanity, it was almost like somebody contradicting the fact that the earth is not flat but a globe. That was such a big change. Here it was the same. His theory of relativity showed the fact that time and space itself is relative and not absolute. What does it mean? It means that the time does not behave exactly the same on earth as when you go outside. It's relative. Relative to what? Relative to the speed with which you are traveling. Because the earth is moving and everything else is moving, and the speed determines the unit of time. So there were some experiments, simple experiments, simulations. So there was this very famous simulation of two twins born on earth at the same time, because they are twins. Now, one goes on outer space travel and the other one stays on earth. If the time was absolute, means it behaved exactly the same whichever corner of the universe, what would happen? Let's say after 50 years of travel outside earth, when the twin comes back to the earth, both the twins should have what? Same age. Right? Both should be 50 years old. Actually, what happened is, the twin who went to outer space, it is not actual, it is simulation. Then, aged differently. Who was older? The one who was staying on this earth was older. So that means the time as we experience on this earth, the minute you leave the atmosphere of the earth, the time moves differently depending upon the speed at which you are traveling. So that means there is no fixed time. It all depends. And even on this earth, it is the same. The principle remains same. So that means if you are traveling by a fast train, the time, the unit of time is what? Reducing or increasing? Reducing. But it is so infinitesimally small that you don't realize it. But when you go outside the atmosphere, it becomes very evident. So that means this time itself, there is no such thing called a fixed time, even the present. Now, how does Vedanta use this fact to show we have our own thing that we need to show, and that is the relationship of awareness with time. So therefore, way before Einstein came up with his theory of relativity, the Vedas make the statement, Jagat is mithya. Jagat, which includes what? Time, space and objects, that has a dependent reality. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. So that means they understood that even time and space has a dependent reality on awareness. And time and space is not independent of awareness. How did the rishis show that? By a very simple method. And that method Anna knows, because in the break she told me, I know what you're going to do. So she knows it. It's a very simple method, and that method is look into the truth of time. Just like what is the method through which I made this pot disappear? By just inquiry into the nature of this pot. You begin to look at the time and the nature of time. For our normal transactional world, we think about time in terms of 3 periods of time. The past, present and future. Now, when you look into the truth of time, you have to say the past, when it was the past, it was what? Present. And when I think about the past, the thought belongs to what? The present. The future, when it takes place, it is going to be what? Present. And now when I think about the future, the thought belongs to what? Present. So that means, if I really want to understand the time, all I need to do is to understand the present. Then I understand the time. But it gets a little tricky, because when I look into the present, I find units within units. 1 hour. It is 12 o'clock, 12:30 already. Oh my God. Okay. So that means time seems to fly here. For me at least. Because I have to cover all these chapters for you, right? So that means the time itself is 1 hour. That 1 hour itself is what? Nothing but sum of 60 minutes. One minute itself is nothing but sum of 60 seconds. 1 second itself is nothing but what? Microseconds, nanoseconds. Again, if I look into the truth of the present, it is units within units within units within units, like this pot. And ultimately, it also is nothing but, what is the final unit? You can't find final unit. Again becomes concept. Just as object reduced to concept, and only one thing remained, which is awareness, the nature of I. When I look into the time, same relationship, time itself, units within units within units within units, concept. And that concept cannot exist without awareness. Then what about space? The space also is the same relationship. Generally, how we think about space is, all of us occupy one point in space. I occupy this point in space, he occupies that point in space, you occupy that point in space. Now, we have to think about the distance which separates us in space. And if I ask what is the distance between me and her, what would you say? Approximately, let's say 1 meter, no, 2 meters, 3 meters? Okay, 3 meters. So now 3 meters is what? 1 meter plus 1 meter plus 1 meter. So 1 meter itself is how many centimeters? 100 centimeters. Then 1 centimeter is how many millimeters? 100. 10. I don't know. We don't even know. Who are all the people who know math or a little bit? So that means one thing we all know, that from there is one more unit. We don't even know the name of that unit. And then further unit, and then further unit, and further unit. That also is reduced to infinity. You can't find a final thing. So therefore, even this space reduces to a concept. So not only the objects resolve as concept, time and space in which the objects exist, they also, when I look into their truth, they resolve in concept. And the relation, only one thing remains, which doesn't get reduced, upon which everything that gets reduced depends upon. And that is what? Awareness. So that means awareness is not an object in time and space, it is the truth of time and space. It is the truth of time, space and objects. This is your true nature. If you give up your ignorance and your connection with this little body and mind, which is a kind of a result of a mix-up, and if you begin to see yourself in true light, what will you discover? What is the nature of Atma? It is one without a second. Non-duality. There is no second thing in this universe. Time, space and objects come from Atma, are sustained by the Atma, go back to the Atma. And Atma remains non-changing.
I understood what you said about time, but about space I didn't understand. If you say, for example, it's 3 meters and you put it in centimeters, then it's 300 centimeters or 30,000 millimeters or something like this.
Yes, but the units go on reducing.
But still there is a distance.
Sorry?
Still there is a distance.
Yeah, still there is a distance.
Which is not in the time, it's not a distance. This I can understand, but the other thing I cannot understand.
Yeah. See, the thing is that if you really think that there is a real distance, then what happens is, see, you have to see the mithyatvam of the whole thing. First, the units themselves go on dividing further and further and further and further. Second thing is, if you look at the same distance in terms of number of points that are there between two finite objects with a finite distance, how many points are there? Infinite. This is mathematics. So that means, how can a finite distance, right, be constituting of infinite points? It makes you understand the relativity of this space.
Okay. Can I try differently?
Yeah.
Yeah. So see, what we are saying, see, time, you understood that there is one thing which is time.
Yeah.
It is empirical. Okay? when you came at 10 o'clock this morning, we all agreed about time, and it has certain reality, right? And we agreed upon that. Like the pot also has an empirical reality, time has an empirical reality,
Yeah.
and space also has an empirical reality, right? And I can measure, apprehend somehow the space between us two by measuring it. We are not denying that there is no space or there is no time, we accept that. Now, like we don't deny that there is a pot. But when we inquire into the reality of them, time you have understood that, oh, what is the present? Oh, present millennium, present century, present day, present hour, present second, present nanosecond. Where is the present? What is the present which has an empirical reality? What is it made of? Okay, this is what we are trying to see, and we say it goes into a concept. So in the same manner, distance is the same. What is this distance? We are speaking about the distance. Yeah, we can measure it, and it's very useful, no doubt. But in terms of reality, does it have an absolute reality or an independent reality? It doesn't have. What is the building block of distance? Is there a minimum unit which constitutes space? Right? This is what, and when you look into that, you say, where is the distance? There is a distance, but when I look into it, I don't find a distance. This is what is called mithya. There is a pot, but when I look into it, I don't see a physical object which is called pot, really speaking. What is the truth of pot? Where is it? Atoms, particle, concept, and then it disappears. So, see, this is the idea. We are not proving here that it's a matter of unit. Unit is just empirical. And you decide as a human, you say, the reference to measure all the distance is 1 meter. It's totally arbitrary. And then this distance you divide it. Here we are saying, even if you divide, where is the minimum, let's say, kind of particle of space out of which all distances are made? Where is it? I don't see it. This is the idea. Did you get it? Better?
Not really. For me,
Yes.
for me, I would say there is no time. There is only some. For example, I said that there is no time because time is what we call time is a movement. For example, the Earth moves one time on itself, and this we call time.
Yeah.
So this I understand that there is no time, but there is
No.
a movement or
It's not. There is a time.
not really.
There is a pot. There is a body. There is a camera. There is a wall. All this has a certain reality.
Yeah.
But we take it
Okay.
as being the absolute reality.
Okay.
And this is
Understand.
what is absolutely intangible.
Okay.
And it doesn't depend upon anything else. Here, by inquiry, you realize that, okay, it is empirical,
Okay.
but it is not absolutely real.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
So that means, this is a very good point. I'm very happy that you raised this question. Normally, when we use the word mithya, right, people think mithya means it's unreal or is not there. We don't use the word mithya as unreal, we use it as dependent reality. So that means something can be empirically true, right? So that means when I say the pot is mithya, I don't mean to say that this pot is an illusion. If I ask you to, for example, this can be, if you begin to think that this bottle is pink, that is what? An illusion. Illusion because what? This bottle is clear, but you see it as what? Pink. That is your personal projection. Right? But when I say this bottle, not this bottle, this pot is mithya, is this bottle like you see it somehow there is only clay but you see the pot, is it?
No.
No. The pot is there. So this is why we divide mithya in two parts. If you want to understand Vedanta correctly, you have to be very clear about two different types of mithya. Otherwise, what will happen is, you will start dismissing the world as unreal. And that is going to create a huge relational problem with the world. Any responsible Vedanta teacher will not make you walk away with an idea that this world is just an illusion and you just need to skip it all and just move to this final reality. The mithya itself is divided in two parts. One is called Vyavaharika mithya and the other one is Pratibhasika mithya. What is the difference between Vyavaharika mithya and Pratibhasika mithya? This pot is not an illusion. Why? Because what? There is a form. And not only you see a pot, but everybody else who is in the room will see the pot. And not only everybody sees a pot, we can use the pot to pour some water. And it can hold only up till here. And it can't hold more. So that means it is empirically true. Empirically true means it has a form, it has a name, and it has a specific function. You can't deny it. This is what we call Vyavaharika. But in terms of its reality, it depends entirely upon clay. Therefore, it is mithya, but empirically true. Vyavaharika. What is it? It is, therefore you see it. The pot is there, that's why everybody in the room sees the pot. What is Pratibhasika mithya? Pratibhasika mithya is slightly different. Imagine if you are in the forest and it is getting dark, and I don't know in Germany if you have snakes or not, but in India we do. And imagine things are little dark and you're in a wood and you see one little long object of brown color. And you think what? Snake. And you think that it is snake. And not only you think that it is snake, that it has a result, which is what? You can begin to run away, you can have heart palpitation, you can be overcome by fear. But the snake that you see is also a mithya. Please understand this. Why is it a mithya? Because the definition of mithya is what? That which depends upon something else for its existence. So the snake that you see also depends upon what for its existence? Rope. If there was no rope, you would not see the snake. If there was a log of wood, which was too big in size, would you mistake it for snake? No. So that means you see a snake, but what is the empirical reality? That is your subjective reality, that is your projection.
Thank you.
That is your projection. But what is actually there is what? Rope. So that means, in this example, please understand, the rope enjoys which order of reality? Empirically true. But the snake that you see enjoys what order of reality? It is your projection. So that means both are mithya, but they have different order of reality. One is empirically true and the other one is entirely your projection. So that means when Vedanta says the world is mithya, the world is not entirely your projection. It is there. The time, space, objects, bodies, trees, mountains, fish, all, everything, sun, moon, stars, time, space, all is empirically true. Even though it is empirically true, so our understanding of a normal person is whatever is empirically true is the final reality. What Vedanta says is what is empirically true has a relative reality, it has a dependent reality. But if you look into anything which has an empirical reality, like in this case, the snake depends upon rope and our normal understanding is rope is the reality. That is how human beings behave. Snake is a projection, but rope is the reality. What Vedanta says is, hey, look into this rope a little bit more. Rope is nothing but fibers. The fibers are nothing but atoms. The atoms are nothing but particles. The particles are nothing but something else. And ultimately it is just a concept. Now, suppose you don't even see the rope. Your mind is on snake. And all the fears that you have because of your perception of a snake. And suppose Vedanta begins the inquiry with rope being mithya, but you don't even see rope as a rope. What are you thinking? It is snake. Where is the match between what Vedanta is talking about and what you are thinking? Do you understand that? The inquiry of Vedanta starts with what we empirically is there, which everybody accepts as the absolute reality. It shows you it does not have an absolute reality, it has a relative reality. But we don't even see the world as it is. We see this world with our own eyes. And in that eyes of ours, you are useless, the world is too much, things are not fair. So that means if my mind is completely caught in my perception of the world, what does Vedanta have to do? What does Gita have to do? First, bring you from what? Snake to the rope. And then second is what? The second step is from rope to the final reality. We have two things to do. Because if your mind doesn't even see the rope, it sees the snake, and not only it sees the snake, but it is caught by the fear of snake, the inquiry which begins with reality of rope, will it make any sense to you? No. So the first job of Vedanta is to make you see from what? From rope, from snake to the rope, and then from rope to what? Awareness. If you try to skip this step and just from this snake and fears, you say everything is awareness, you will be hanging up in the air with some concept of awareness. trying to escape your fears, your projections and all that without first coming to the reality. Reality is the inquiry into reality means you have to be clear all the way. We all live with confusion of reality. What is vyavaharika, what is empirically true, seems like absolute reality to us. But what is our own projection also seems like absolute reality to us. So that means when we live in the world, what happens is our whole mind is all over the place. And everybody else lives with the same confusion, and then what happens is interactions become difficult. The participation becomes difficult. So therefore, this non-confusing between three orders of reality. Mithya is divided into pratipasika and vyavaharika, but both have a dependent reality, and there is only one independent reality, which is called paramarthika, and that is your true nature. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. So we are not trying to negate the empiricality of this universe. That's why learning to live in this universe is a very important first step to Vedanta. You can't skip that step.
So the work is when I got fear
Yes.
for anything, for
Yes.
something,
Yeah.
I have to clear up my mind and look about it in detail, and then the fear goes and all the emotion go, and my mind will be clearer.
Super. So that means one of the most misused thing about Vedanta is when you have, for example, fear. You try to tell yourself fear happens only in the mind and mind is mithya, so and I'm awareness and I'm free from the fear. And you try to skip that step, the very important step which you just mentioned. And that is to look into that fear and then resolve it relatively. Because only when you resolve it relatively, then your mind has a quality where it can begin to understand what Vedanta is saying. Otherwise, imagine the mind which is caught with fear, how will it understand I am the whole? Not possible. Two things cannot coexist. On one hand, extreme fear, and the other hand, I am the whole. That means there is a split.
So there is still continuous, like a sadhana for the mind.
Very good.
Right? So there's
And
no
this is
free pass.
exactly what Lord Krishna was telling Arjuna. He tells him that I have now taught you the nature of Atma. And you may think, oh, now I know Atma of me and Duryodhana is one. And Atma doesn't die, that is not born, it never changes. It's all ever new. Everything else depends upon Atma. So now what? We are both one Atma, let me go home. Don't need to do anything. This is how we misuse Vedanta. But Lord Krishna is much smarter. So the teaching is now, yes, I have taught you this reality, but you still have to what? You still have to make the second decision. What is the second problem of Arjuna? What? First was the fundamental human problem, and the second one was situational problem, which is what should I do now? So now, after having answered the fundamental problem by saying that if you really know the nature of Atma, then you are free because there is no second thing other than Atma in this whole universe. So that means the grief naturally goes away. But before you understand the nature of Atma, there is a long way to go, because every knowledge requires preparation. As I told you, if your mind is fraught with fear of snake, where is it going to be available to inquire into the nature of rope? Too much of a gap. So that means you first need to bring it to the empirical reality, rope. Then the inquiry helps. So therefore, the whole life has to become what? The grief that Arjuna was feeling was a result of his vision of the world, which was not exactly in keeping with what the world is. So now, in his decision making, Lord Krishna says is, I have taught you what is the nature of Atma. Now I am going to teach you what is the second question. What is the second question? What should I do now in this situation? For this decision, the criteria is different. And what is that criteria? We will see next class. So therefore, there is a change of topic. Change of topic from nature of Atma to what? What should I do now? Okay, I do understand somehow, not totally, but I do understand that ultimately what I need to understand is the nature of Atma, which is one, non-dual, and that will really give me the ultimate freedom that I am what? Searching for. And I have started the inquiry, but before that inquiry culminates into knowledge, I have steps to take in my personal growth. And this is exactly what Lord Krishna tells Arjuna. What are those steps in the personal growth, and how to live your life, which then prepares you for knowledge, is the rest of the Gita. We will see that. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.